Welcome to the End in Mind Virtual Book Club. So settle in the couch, your favorite chair, what have you. We're going to listen to conversations during this virtual book club that reflect what End in Mind is all about. How to navigate life-limiting illnesses, caregiving to those who are seriously ill, walking the end-of-life journey, and life after a death. I'm Cathy Wurzer. I'm the founder of the End in Mind Project. I'm also a broadcast journalist with Minnesota Public Radio and Twin Cities PBS. We're in the downtown Minneapolis studios of Undertone Music for our conversation today with author Savita Harjani. It is so great to see you, Savita. Welcome.
Thank you, Cathy. It's absolutely an honor to be here today. I'm thrilled.
She has a great personal story, a fascinating personal story. We're going to get to that as we talk about her excellent book, Postcards from Within, Random Ramblings of an Ordinary Human. I've said this to you in the past. Really, it is a lovely, lovely book. And it's your first one.
It is my first one. I am absolutely humbled to hear you say that. It means a lot.
I have to say, Postcards from Within, Random Ramblings of an Ordinary Human. You are not an ordinary human. As I say, your story is really quite amazing. I want people to get to know you, if that's all right.
Yeah, please.
You grew up in New Delhi.
I did.
What brought you to the United States?
I found my husband, and I married very young. He was a PhD student, and he came to the United States a year before me. And at the age of 20, he asked me to marry him, and I said yes. And it was in the mid-'80s, 85, and fortunately, neither sets of parents had any issues with it. And we married, and that's how I came to the U.S.
All right. And then Minnesota, you understand that you studied law at Hamline University School of Law?
Right. So we started our life in the United States in Pittsburgh. He was at Carnegie Mellon. And then we moved to California. He worked in industry for a bit, and then faculty at the U here. So once we settled down, then I went to Hamline, and I got my law degree.
Oh, my goodness. All right. And then you ended up at Thomson Reuters?
Yes, then West Publishing.
Oh, right. Back in the day, yes.
Back in the day, yeah.
And what did you do there, just out of curiosity?
I was a reference attorney. I did legal research, and West had come up with the Westlaw Legal Research Platform. I loved it. It was just phenomenal. So
now I'm curious about the reaction that your parents may have had to you moving to the United States. How did they take that?
They were surprised. They were not expecting either that I would get married this early or move that far. So in those days, in the mid-'80s, traditional families would get their daughters married off about the time that I got married. And my parents said, absolutely not. You go get however high an education you want, and we'll talk about it 10 years from today. And here I was at 20, not even finished my undergrad, and I wanted to get married. And they supported me.
Just a bit of a surprise that you came to the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they didn't, it wasn't a source of friction.
No, not at all.
Yeah. I'm curious, did your father die first, and then your mother was a widow? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
He died to the day in 1997.
That we're talking today?
Today, yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any accidents in terms of why you're here today.
No. He was an amazing man. Both my parents were.
When did your mother get sick? I'm curious.
On and off, little things, gallbladder operation, hysterectomy, all of those things were really manageable because she wasn't really sick. It wasn't an illness. Something happened, did a surgery, it was managed. But then about 2014, she started to, have kidney issues. And she was not on dialysis. She was trying to manage it through diet and other things. But in 2016, it became clear that she had to go on dialysis. And
that's difficult.
Yeah. So from 2014 to 16, I was going back and forth a lot. But in March of 2016, I just moved because it was not possible to manage from here.
That is a huge decision to do something like that. So you uprooted your professional life.
I was done. I quit. For the time being, I was done because it was 24/7 what I was going to do for her health management.
And you moved back to India, leaving your husband here.
Yes, and he is such an amazing guy that I couldn't have done it without him, because we made this decision together, and he supported me emotionally, physically, financially, any which way. And he's a big reason why I was able to do this.
Is it, in Indian culture, is it a given that a daughter or a son would become the main caregiver of a parent?
Cathy, traditionally that's how it's been. But anecdotally, I know that model is changing. And expectations are there, but also limitations are there, because a lot of people are here, like I am, with their parents back home. And it's not possible for everybody to just uproot themselves. For better or for worse, I didn't have children, biological children of my own. And so that was one complication that I didn't have to deal with, that if I moved to take care of my mother, who would take care of my children? But I did certainly disrupt my own family life with my husband, who's the most precious thing for me. And I moved, So
Did you ever consider bringing your mom here for care?
I did, and it was not possible for several reasons. The first was, I think I said this to you once before, that I think parents can never feel that same right in a child's home as a child does in their parents' house. And in the last years of my life, I really wanted my mother to be the queen of her castle and not be a guest who was sort of watching everything she said or where she stepped. And secondly, it was much easier to get help, at-home help that we could pay out of pocket. We could sort of afford it. We could never afford it here.
It's very expensive.
Yeah. And then she would not qualify for insurance. And dialysis, she was on a couple of different kinds of dialysis, not going into that, but she was on peritoneal dialysis, which we did every day at home for 16 hours.
Wow.
So those were some of the reasons that I just decided that this will work better if I was there.
How are you feeling about that decision?
Good. I have, both my husband and I, we have zero regrets about it. And I think today, now that 4 years have gone by since she passed, I am really glad that we are still together, because one of the challenges was that relationship. And when you're gone for that long, over 4 years, nearly 5, it's not easy to sort of remain connected, even though we were talking several times a day. My kitchen had become his kitchen and all of that.
Right.
But we managed, and I think we are closer today than we've ever been.
People watching this would probably say, oh my gosh, she quit her job and she uprooted her professional self, which for some people that it's hard to understand. Can you explain what you were feeling? Obligation is not the right word to use here.
Yeah.
I don't think. But, that you felt the need to do this.
Absolutely, Cathy. It's so clear in my head, and I'm happy to share that with you. First, justifiably, people have difficulty understanding that decision, because it's not an easy one to make. And not only not an easy one to make, people don't have that choice many a time to uproot themselves and do this. So I was very, very lucky. I acknowledge that part of it. And secondly, ever since I moved to the United States as a 20-year-old, I knew that some point will come when these pillars of my life will, start to crumble. They'll become vulnerable. They'll need my help. And I was absolutely committed to being there for my mother or my father, but it happened to be my mother. There was absolutely no doubt. I wasn't sure how. I wasn't sure when. I wasn't sure how it was going to play out, but I was absolutely committed to doing it.
I'm glad you did. I could only imagine how grateful she was that you came back.
She was. But she was also a very strong woman, in the sense she was a woman of faith. And her faith was not one of religion or going to temples. She had faith in God. And she knew that God would not let her down. Even if I did, God would figure out a way. And even if that meant the game being over, then that's what it meant. So she was very content with that. And there was an inner peace and an inner strength that was so beautiful about her.
I wish I could have met her.
I do too. She was just phenomenal.
She sounds, as you read the book, like just a force. She was a force.
And very quiet and gentle.
But a force.
But a force. No doubt.
So when you went to live with your mom, was that your girlhood home, by the way? Just curious.
No, it wasn't. I didn't grow up in that house. My parents moved 10 years after my marriage. So,
just curious if you went back.
No.
So you went to live with your mother, and you started keeping a journal, which I think is an excellent thing to do.
I actually didn't intend to keep a journal, Cathy. It was so challenging at times. And I didn't find I could share my thoughts with many people. I didn't want to share with my mom because many times I was so distressed. I didn't want her to feel like a burden because she never was. I shared a lot with my husband, but I didn't want to share everything with him because his plate was full. And so I needed to have those thoughts out of my head to give them voice. And instead of voice, I gave them words. And I started writing in my phone because I was always with mom. I didn't have time to go make time for journaling. And it was only after the fact that I learned that one of the self-care tools is journaling. And I was instinctively doing that. So I didn't intend to write the book, but here it is.
Well, Postcards from Within is not what I would call a hands-on manual for caregiving at all. And there are lots of those. And there are some excellent books out there to do that sort of thing. And the reason I was drawn to your book and your work was quite interested in how you felt, the stresses you felt as a caregiver, the exhaustion, the anger, the frustration, and ultimately grief. And I have to say, it was a very courageous decision on your part to mine those emotions. Why did you decide to do that?
I think everybody needs to give voice to what they're feeling. Because better out than in. And the second thing was, in writing to myself, in writing to life, dear life, I was asking those questions and I was going through analysis. When you asked me about being committed, I was 100% committed to being there for mom. But when I encountered my own limitations, my own failings, my vulnerabilities, I'm like, okay, what is this? What is this showing up? And then in one place I do an analysis. Why am I doing this? And then I answer my question that it is because I love my mother and it is the right thing to do. If I didn't do this, I'd be so guilt-ridden that I wouldn't be able to move forward. And then I said, are absence of guilt and presence of love sufficient conditions to do this? And the answer came, no, they're not. Because at some point, the reasons either become redundant or what you're doing becomes overly burdensome, as it had started to become. And I came up with the distinction choice, which was so empowering, that I am doing this out of choice because I choose to do this. Not because of anything else. I choose to do this. And that would shift me from being a victim to a person who was empowered with choices. And I would have to renew and recite that choice 20 times a day because it was that hard.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Yeah.
But it was a choice. And that's why I did what I did.
And because you made that choice, did you find also you were supported in the choice? I believe you have a brother.
Yeah.
Did he support you in this?
Absolutely.
Okay. Did he help at all?
Absolutely. In whatever way he could. He was not able to be on the ground. Also a lawyer, UNHCR. He was posted in Botswana, family in Australia with boys in Australia. And his job was huge. And I chose to do this. And one of his gifts to me was a carte blanche in decision-making. It was his mom, too. He never, ever questioned the choices, the decisions, the medical choices I made. And
What a
I have
relief.
seen
That's a relief.
siblings really go at it because everybody thinks they know what's best. And we are all coming, and the intention is good. But it doesn't make for an easy family environment. So when my brother did that, it was huge. And we would talk, and yeah.
I'm wondering, too, because you did such a good job with the exploration of what you were feeling, the book is so accessible to all caregivers, even though it's set in India, right? I mean, because all of us, and I include myself as a caregiver, because that's what I am. My mom's 87. We all experience the same emotions. And I sometimes think we don't know what to do with this because I'll speak for myself. I will do whatever it takes for my mother, and I'm happy to do this. But then I find myself getting a little irritated.
Absolutely.
Or frustrated, and then a little anger seeps in, and then I try to rein that back in. It's this roller coaster of emotions. How did you deal with that?
It absolutely is. And you just have to deal with it. And one of the strategies that I think I came up with was I understood emotions are temporary. If I fought to change the emotion and also muster energy to move forward, I ended up fighting 2 battles and loss of energy. And so whatever was the emotion, I would be like, yeah, this is how I'm feeling right now. It's going to change. It may get worse, it may get better, but it's not going to be the same. I'm going to just keep it on the side right now and then sort of try and do what I need to do. Because otherwise, it was just really hard to move forward. And then in another situation where a decisional paralysis sort of, because you're so afraid of making the wrong decision. My mother, she was an amazing patient. I would not be like that. I would be a very difficult person to take care of because she literally put her life in my hands and said, whatever you decide, sort of a thing. She had moments, which I'll come to later, but and then that sense of responsibility that what if I make a mistake?
Right.
What if I make the wrong decision?
Right. That's so hard.
And I came up with strategies to deal with that. And for example, I would take everything that I could take into account before making the decision and then place myself in the future, where the future me was likely to encounter the consequences of this decision I'm making now. And if in the future, given what I know now, I would make the same decision, I would act. And if it turned out to be not the best, then I would chalk it up to an unintended consequence. But it gave me the space to not be paralyzed anymore, to just say, hey, this is all I know. I have to act. So I came up with little strategies like that to kind of deal with things.
I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm wondering, when you were with Mom in India, did you feel that you had the support of those around you, her friends, maybe other family members, perhaps neighbors? She had a long-term domestic helper, more than a son to her, more than a brother to me. I still talk to him morning and night. He's in a village in India. So he was incredible. And we had somebody his son actually, who did all the cooking and everything. Towards the later part of Mom's care, when it became very, very complex, we had a daytime nurse and a nighttime nurse. So we had nursing help all the time. We had the fruit vendor, the vegetable vendor, the milk and eggs guy, the rickshaw guy, where I couldn't take a car and go in. These guys would just show up, and they were my community. Nobody can go at it alone. Yeah, no.
But these people, they brought joy in very little ways, but big, big joy into our lives. The fruit vendor, for example, I explained to him one time that Mom is very vulnerable, susceptible to infections. She needs fruit with integrity intact. And so he understood that, and he would make a bag every day for her. And if somebody else tried to touch it, he'd get upset. So it was amazing. As challenging as it was also a very amazing time.
You mentioned the support, which I'm so happy that you had that support, because there are so many people who are watching who don't feel they have the support. And you wrote something that I thought was interesting in the book, and perhaps you can read it for us. This is on page 94. And throughout the course of the book, by the way, Savita is writing about, addresses dear life, and then she signs her letters, the ordinary human. On page 94, you were talking about you were draining your mother's dialysis bag. I'm not sure how that actually manifests. But you were talking about you had an insight into the woe is me routine and the evolution into silence from peddling one's sob stories. Could you take it from there, if you would, please?
There were several points that became clear to me. First, very few people care that one is going through a rough patch in life. Everyone is busy with their own challenges. Upon hearing the woeful tale, even the ones that do care can only utter well-intentioned, genuine words of sympathy to the effect of "you poor thing." But such words are to no avail, as they cannot better one's situation. Second, some people might even derive comfort at one's plight, knowing that they are not alone in experiencing the struggles of life. Third, once life gets really challenging, there comes a point where the fatigue of the everyday battle of life makes one too tired to even attempt to describe one's pain, sorrow, or suffering, and one evolves into a state of dignified silence.
And then you wrote, which I think is interesting, dear life.
Yeah.
No one wants to listen. You say, I too am becoming increasingly silent. No one wants to listen. Everyone wants to talk. Is there any point to conversation? Did you feel that you were not being listened to? How did this manifest? I'm curious, because there are so many people who are caregivers who think, would someone listen to me? I've got a story and I need some of that support.
No, you reminded me of this time, Cathy, because it was a really challenging time. And no matter how much help or support you have, there is this sense of isolation because you are the one who's primarily responsible. And people don't have time. People have their own challenges in life. It's not that they're ill-intentioned or they don't want to help. People are so busy. Lives are so busy. And then the fatigue, actual fatigue. I mean, I was so tired. I didn't want to tell anybody how I was feeling. I didn't have the energy to do that. If I had even a morsel of energy left, it would go into the care rather than to say what it was that I needed or wanted. So I think that's kind of what inspired this thought.
Did you ever find yourself sliding into despair?
A lot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. But I think it's part of the journey. It's totally a part of the journey. It's a full bag of emotions because you have good days, you have bad days, you have despair. And I think the hardest part was watching somebody you love that deeply be in pain and suffer and not be able to do something to lessen their suffering. And that's a really, really hard thing to do. I think somewhere I described that my cross to bear was watching her having to bear her cross. And I think that's a really hard thing. And yeah.
Do you, and we should also say, so your mom was not only dealing with kidney issues, she developed cancer after a certain point, which made it, I'm sure, very difficult to eat and swallow and perhaps talk. And
that's how we caught it, because she was having trouble swallowing.
I see.
It was esophageal cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, you were going to ask a question?
No, I'm just outlining that you were dealing with, it was a complex medical situation you were dealing with.
Yeah, very much so.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, and this is from one of our wonderful supporters. This is Annette. Annette on Facebook wanted to know this. She felt one of the hardest obstacles she's encountered with her mother and her father was affording them the respect they deserved as her parents, yet doing what was right for their health and safety. And, there's so much that goes into this. She said, rather than fight their preferences, I would sleep overnight in the living room, available if they needed help during the night. We are taught, she writes, to honor and respect our parents, but where and when do you know that it is time to take control of their care, especially when falls or other life-threatening issues start happening more frequently? Because your mother had this complex medical situation going on, did you find that there was this pull and tug between what your mom wanted and what you thought might be best for her safety and health?
I did, Cathy, but I'm sure to a much lesser extent than a lot of people might face, simply because of her personality type. And I was lucky because that's who she was. I mean, my life was complicated enough, and had she been an average person, it would have been very, very complicated. But still, there were issues of, small things. When do we move to diapers? And that's dignity. That's about dignity, right? When we started having one accident too many, and I would be up at nights changing bed sheets, changing all of this, as it is exhausted. And I know my love and compassion for her never wavered, but that's when the anger, the frustration, the fatigue would cloud those unwavering emotions of love and compassion. But, and so Annette is right, there's this tug of, or at what point, and that at some point they also realize, yeah, it's time. But there has to be that period where I think our parents or whoever we are caring for will probably think, no, I can manage. This was a one-off.
Right.
And then it's not a one-off. But I also learned that this was an insight for me. A lot of times we want to care for people in the way we want to care for them, rather than in the way they either need to be cared for or want to be cared for.
That's true.
And the insight for me was, what would I want if I was the patient? I want to be in her shoes and see how she's feeling right now. And it did not make me, I did not want to wear diapers. I did not want to, this is such a small thing, but such a huge thing. The pants that women wear in India, they have the tape that ties up. I wanted to change all of that to elastic because we needed to be able to just yank it down rather than struggling with knots. Mm-hmm. And that was all her life. Here's an 80-plus year-old woman. She has tied that knot. And now to put elastic on her pants, it was like, no, don't do that. And she actually was not as stubborn about it, but her older sister, whom also we were caring for because my mother was her caregiver, she was a very difficult person. And so I know what Annette is talking about, that caring, she did not allow us to do that. And it was real struggle. And it was such a simple issue if we had managed it. But now we were in this cycle of, changing bed sheets every night.
So hard. Oh, my goodness.
So after a transition, you go back and forth, and then that thing settles in. Then a new issue comes up.
Yes.
And then so on and so forth.
Well, it's like you're on quicksand.
Yes.
Or shifting sand, I should say.
Yeah.
Right.
All the time.
More accurate.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up stubbornness because another one of our wonderful people from Facebook, Lisa, says, just curious, would love to know how to deal with the stubbornness of the person you are caring for. And she harkens back to her sister and she says, we're both willing and able to help our mother stay out of assisted living. Nothing wrong with it, by the way, to be in assisted living. But Mom steadfastly refused to leave her large 2-story home. And really, there was no other option. She wouldn't come to live with either of the daughters. So the question really is, and they were in a rural area, how does one deal with the stubbornness of one's caregivee, if that's the right word to use?
I think that's a good word to use. Absolutely, Cathy. And, part of the first response sort of applies. I would always try and put myself in her shoes so that I could just get a little more patience to deal with it. Not that that made for a solution, but it gave for a perspective shift, which made some other emotions manageable so I could have that conversation, not agitated. Second, again, that same insight that what does she need? What does she want? I know as caregivers, there's a duty of responsibility too.
Yes, exactly.
But if mom, till the point she didn't have diminished capacity, she was still in charge. And I think people like to stay in charge, or at least the sense that they are still in charge. And with mom, I would lay out all the options. We year into cancer, she was in remission, but a huge lump showed up on her shoulder. I was freaking out. And I'm like, Mom, we got to get this biopsied. She's like, nope, not going to do it. And I was like, okay, that's your choice. But here are what's going to happen, right? We're going to wonder about this lump 24/7 to know whether this is making us sicker or not. We can go to the hospital. In all likelihood, it's benign. They will tell us that. And then we can forget about it. But the choices are yours. And so once she felt she was in charge, she mulled over it. And then, I would just ask her, so how are you feeling about this today or whatever? And it was about her. It was not about me, right? And somewhere in the book, I also talk about tough love.
Yes, I noted that.
That to me, I don't buy into tough love anymore because I did that analysis in my head and it was like, tough love is about me. It's not about anybody, the recipient of my tough love. Because it's either I don't want to live without them. It's me not wanting to live without them. Or I don't want to see them suffer. It's me not wanting to see them suffer. Or I don't want to have to care for them for some stupid decision that they're making. If something can be fixed and they're not doing it, I am the caregiver. I am responsible. So it's all about me. Right. But as a caregiver, it's actually about her. And the moment I was able to shift that perspective, and I think, Cathy, this shifting of perspective was just a God-sent tool for me. Because it changed what your underlying emotion became. And so when that happened and I knew, okay, you're in charge, this is your decision, you are still completely competent to make this decision.
Which gave her some dignity.
Absolutely. And so 3-4 days later, because she was so worried about it.
Oh,
how can she not be? I mean, there's a huge lump on your shoulder.
Of course.
She goes, will it hurt a lot? I said, well, you've done biopsy before, it's going to be probably similar. And plus it's quick, right? Even if it hurts, it's quick. And she's like, okay, let's do this. So it's letting them get to that point, I think. And it's not easy because for me, I was not dealing with a job. I had quit my job and I was a full-time caregiver. But for people who have to balance so many things, they have to balance their own family, they have to balance their work, and then they have to balance this. Not an easy job.
It's almost impossible some days.
Absolutely.
Almost.
And I completely acknowledge that. So my situation was, I think I was, as hard as it was, I was very privileged and very lucky that I was focused on this. How life would turn out after she left was still to be seen. Because I could have, completely, the biggest thing in my life could have gone, my relationship with my husband. If that happened, I would probably, I don't know, go back into the workforce. I didn't know where I would start. But
so many
questions. But for the moment, that's the other thing. You are in the moment.
Right.
You cannot be thinking about
what's
going to happen.
Because it would drive you crazy.
Absolutely. And there's nothing you can do about it.
I've been listening to you talk. It's interesting. You use the words we and us. We went to hospital, and it was very much obviously a close bond with you and your mom. Did you find that the bond became even more solid, more stronger bond as she became sicker?
Yeah, for sure.
Good.
And she started to, depend and rely more and more. And I think, again, in my book, I think I talk about it somewhere that I didn't have biological children. She gifted me the experience of motherhood because I really did take care of her as my own baby. It got to that point where it was like taking care of a child, from what I'm given to understand, yeah. And that was really brilliant that I got to experience that.
Let me ask you this. It must have been, of course, extremely difficult when a parent leaves this world. And you wrote, this is May 11th, 2020. And I don't want to read this. These are your words. So if you would grace us, please. This is at the very beginning of the book.
Yeah.
It's an entry where it was from May 11th, 2020. Would you mind reading that, please?
Yes. Watching you suffer, I thought, was the toughest thing I have done. Letting you go, turns out, is tougher. You were grace and elegance personified until the very end. I am grateful that your suffering has ended. But how do I fill the huge void in my heart and soul? Until we meet again, Ma, I hope you and I will always be mother and daughter in every lifetime. Be at peace, my Pakka Dost. Pakka Dost is best friend.
Oh.
And yeah.
I want to know, do you think you were emotionally prepared for your mom's death? And I ask that because I will be completely transparent. I was not prepared for my father's passing at all.
Yeah.
It caught me off guard completely because I was so focused on what was going on. I just couldn't see the forest for the trees. Were you emotionally prepared?
I was expecting it. Being prepared, I think, is a different thing.
That's true.
I knew that now that I'm a hospice care volunteer too, the jargon is, I knew she was transitional. She'd become, and then there is actively dying. Mm-hmm. So I can now identify, looking back, that when she started to become transitional, that these were her last days, and then when she was actively dying. Mm-hmm. So I was expecting it, and I was not prepared for it. I was holding her hand, and I knew she was there, and then she wasn't. And in that moment, I had become an orphan and completely lost.
I understand the feeling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It does leave a hole in one's heart.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, Postcards from Within, you make frequent mentions of Indian customs and culture, which I loved. Mm-hmm. Would you mind talking about the concepts of, you talked about the concepts of, I'm a little shook up
sorry.
here. It's okay. No, it's all right. This is what happens,
Sorry about that.
It's okay. You talk about the concepts of reincarnation and karma given your upbringing in the Hindu religion.
Yeah.
What do you hope happens when you leave this earth?
I have a passage about it, the Harry Potter passage about it.
Yes.
I envision that once we leave this earth, we go someplace, and then there are these people, at the high table, gods of, because I'm agnostic, but I still want to believe in karma and reincarnation because I want to know that I will meet my mother again or all these people that I love. But I don't know if I really believe that, but I want to believe that. And so we die, we go up there, and at the high table are seated all these gods. And Lord Krishna was playing the part of McGonagall, and he put the sorting hat on my head. And there were 3 houses in the karma school of humans and humanity. There was heaven, hell, and earth. And I really didn't want to go to hell. And I wasn't ready for heaven because the sorting hat said, there's good, there's a lot of good. But there was also arrogance and holier-than-thou attitude. Because I was being called a good daughter by so many people that I started to believe I was a good person, good daughter. So that thought came to me in that moment that I was being arrogant. And then the sorting hat said, no, you're not there yet. Better go back to earth. And that's how reincarnation works. So that's how I imagine it to be. I don't know.
We'll find out somewhere
Yes.
along the line. We have.
I should have. I knew.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have Kleenex here, and we don't.
That's okay. No worries.
This is actually why I like the work.
Yeah.
This is difficult work, but it actually is the most enriching work I've ever done in my career. I can't even imagine, and thank you for being vulnerable. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, Cathy, and you are so inspiring with that work, and I appreciate that.
I wish I knew where it was going, though, Savita. I don't know yet. I don't know. We have another question from Facebook. This is from Liz. So, Liz, thank you so much. I appreciate this. What are to this conversation we're having at this point about passage, death and dying? What are the move forward challenges for a caregiver after a death or recovery of the one being cared for?
For sure, Cathy. And I think I touched upon it that I was expecting Mom's passing, but I was not prepared for it. I thought I was. I was not. And the first reaction was a momentary, very tiny moment of relief that her suffering has ended.
Yeah.
And relief also covered that my suffering at having to watch her suffer has ended. My fatigue, my physical fatigue, I'm not going to be doing this more. That momentary relief shifted to an enormous amount of guilt. How can I feel relief about the person I love so deeply passing away? Guilt got accompanied by a sense of loss that, for so many years, she was my focus 24/7, and especially in the last few months. I was up all night with her because she was so uncomfortable. I had nothing. I had nothing left to do.
Feels like you were unmoored.
Absolutely. My focus, my purpose in life just vaporized. So in my particular case, so it was that, and then we were in the middle of height of COVID. International travel was shut.
Yes.
After her passing, it took me 2.5 months to get on an evacuation flight, which was a 16-hour nonstop to Chicago. We were in PPE gear, and there was no service on the flight. So I took that flight, and I came back, and that's when I started to process my grief. And the last section of the book I call re-entry, because when I left, I had left a void in my own universe. People, friends, places, career. And voids, as science would tell you, fill up. And this one did. And I struggled to find my place in my own universe. And then one day, a friend who had lost her husband a few years ago, she said, take time. Grief takes whatever time grief takes. And I wanted to, I used to have these thoughts. Mom was 85. She's gone. I am 55, and I'm not a spring chicken. Why am I not being able to move forward? And I was just paralyzed. And then I think grief also manifested itself as physical pain for me.
Yes.
My back hurt. I couldn't get out of the bed. I was on medication. And I struggled and struggled and struggled for 2 years. And one time, to the date, to her death anniversary, 2 years later, my husband and I were in London. And we were walking across the iconic Tower Bridge. And suddenly I caught myself laughing. And I'm getting goosebumps as I'm describing this sensation because it was so real. It was so palpable. It was so there. I felt as though a weight had lifted off of me. And I could move forward. And I have no idea what, but I think it wasn't like I stopped missing Mom or that loss wasn't there. But that anguish, that guilt, that anger, that frustration, all of those emotions suddenly got smaller. And then in June, when we got back from London, and that's when I started working on the book.
Was it a healing process to write the book, or did it dredge up some pain? Oh, probably
both.
Both, and yeah.
But I was so grateful that I was writing in real time, because there was no way I was going to be able to recreate the intensity of the emotions that I felt when I captured them. And so that's kind of how it was for me after Mom passed away.
I told you she has an amazing story, and I'm so grateful that you shared it with us. Have I missed something that you want to add for those who are watching us that you really want to underscore when it comes to our conversation about being a caregiver and all the changes that can happen to those of us who are in this role?
Yes, Cathy. I think caregivers don't either know that they're caregivers. I didn't know I was a caregiver till halfway into the journey. And I found out because I had gone to my mother's doctor's office for something for her. And in my head, I kept thinking, one kind word from anyone, and I'm going to go to pieces. There was no kind word. She just said hello, and I had a meltdown. And she told me, because I'd been going to her, she knew my background. I'm from the U.S., and I'm here taking care of Mom. And then she said, you have caregiver burnout. Caregiver burnout is so real. Nobody could have loved my mother more than I did. And I had caregiver burnout. Because these are your physical limitations. These are your human limitations. This is humanity. It's the human condition. And so I wish, people would take care of themselves. I was instinctively writing, journaling, but even more consciously. And they don't have to be big breaks. They don't have to be, you don't have to go away for the weekend anywhere. Somebody asked me when I was at one of my previous presentations, I said, would going to the grocery store count as a break? And I said, well, if you're loitering in the international aisle and looking at all the sauces, it's a distraction.
Sure.
And for sure that would be self-care, but not, if you're just...
Or in my case, the pastry area.
There you go.
Exactly.
Exactly.
The bakery area is always good. It can be. Right.
And, like I was telling you about my little brooch here.
I love her brooch.
And
isn't this pretty? I love it.
I must fess up. This belongs to my husband. I've stolen for today. But I started collecting jewelry. That was, again, self-care. So to just bottom line things about caregiver burnout and self-care is that self-care is counterintuitive because you never have time for it. Not doing self-care is counterproductive because if you can't look after yourself, if you burn out, you will not be able to look after the person you're caring for. So
Wise words. Wise words.
I don't know where they're coming from, Cathy. That's not me.
Maybe you're channeling maybe your mother and father. I don't know right now, I want to ask one final question is this. So again, I think considering this is your very first book that you've ever written, you did just a spectacular job. I'm hoping you continue to write. Do you have any other ideas, any other books you're writing at this point?
I do have ideas, and I'm always, this subtitle is Random Ramblings. I'm always rambling. and my phone is my friend because I capture. I've come to that stage where I don't remember thoughts. If I don't capture them.
Get in line. We're all like that. It's fine.
I know. So I capture them, and then I expand on them. And the next thing, I think I mentioned to you that today is my father's death anniversary. And he was an amazing man, too. And I have found a lot of his writings. And I want to look at that and perhaps, do something along with his writings, involve him. And maybe that might be my next project. I don't know. I don't know yet. There's several that I'm playing with.
Good. Well, I'm glad because this is a new act for you. This is another chapter of your life,
and the most fun.
I'm glad to hear that.
Absolutely. This has been so soul satisfying and so fulfilling for me to get this out there, and it's Mom's blessings. Her last words to me. Her last words on earth were, "You write." And this is her blessing.
Oh, I love that. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this. I knew this was going to be a great conversation, and Savita,
Thank you, Cathy. Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, anytime I get to talk with you is always great. So Savita Harjani, the book, get it, Postcards from Within, Random Ramblings of an Ordinary Human.
Yep.
Now, we've sent you a link already. So if you wish to order her book, yes, check that out. It's also a link on our website. I was going to say mprnews.org, but that would be incorrect. Don't do that. endinmindproject.org. You can tell where my head is sometimes. endinmindproject.org. And while you're on our website, by the way, sign up for the newsletter because I think we've got a pretty good newsletter, actually.
Absolutely.
We have a wonderful thing that we send out to people every week. So thank you again for being with us, my friend.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for being here. We appreciate you, of course. Take care, and we will see you soon.